Young. How you doing?
Good, Becko.
The Offspring.
How's it going, Becko?
Dave Grohl. How you going, mate?
Good, man.
Pete, it's been a long time coming.
Oh, Becko, hasn't it indeed?
We go inside the dressing room, speak to the biggest names in music,
Keith Richards, the Rolling Stones.
and crack open their esky.
This is exactly how I imagine you, by the way, sitting opposite me with a vodka and orange.
You're a discerning chap. This is The Rider.
Hey, it's Becko. Welcome back to The Rider, the huge show to come, and thank you for subscribing. Of course, over the last few weeks, we've had Gavin Rossdale from Bush and even Orianthe celebrating her brand new album, which came out last week. This week on The Rider, it is What's So Not. This guy, Chris, he's on his third album. He has lived with Daniel Johns in Newcastle, and they were working on certain projects together. And in fact, he put a song out with Daniel about 4 years ago. But tell you what, I want to talk about a couple of lineups for festivals coming up. Now, I was at the Big Red Bash and the Monday Bash this year. Monday happens next August. This lineup is going to be insane on the Big Red Dirt in the middle of nowhere. It's one of the coolest festivals you ever go to. Ice House, Hoodoo Gurus, Human Nature. We've got Pete Murray this year, The Angels, of course with Dave Gleeson up front. Troy Cassadaly, Dragon, Thirsty Merc. The list goes on. Even Jack Jones and the Pierce Brothers. So that's happening next August. And also, next year in Vegas, October, one of the biggest lineups I think I've ever seen in the world for a rock festival when we were young. Now, this year's festival is coming up pretty soon in Vegas. They've announced next year's already, and it's already sold out. To give you an idea, you got Green Day, Blink-182, 30 Seconds to Mars, The Offspring, Good Charlotte, 5 Seconds of Summer, Rise Against, Yellow Card. You get the idea, and is that the Veronicas? The Veronicas are on there as well, so that's next October in Vegas. If you get some tickets to that, well, definitely go, because that's one hell of a lineup. Now, this week on The Rider, What's So Not? We all know this song with Daniel Johns, which came out 4 years ago. The album Anomaly, it is out now. You know this song from that. And one of the highlights from Anomaly is the track Mr. Regular with Killer Mike, which is pretty awesome. So you're going to hear plenty of stories off that album in this week on The Rider with Becko. Chris, how are you, mate?
Mate, also Chris. I'm
Yes.
doing great. I'm tired. It's been a long day, but like doing exciting things, talking about exciting things. It's been awesome.
You're in LA at the moment, but you're still famously one of Newcastle's famous or favourite sons.
Oh, how good's that? I snuck in there pretty quick. I've only had a place there for about a year and a half.
It's going to be some of your best work, by the way. So your third album is about to come out. You just know it's going to be so many great summer songs in there for the Aussie summer. And, of course, the American summer. You've already got a couple of great ones out there this year.
Thank you, yeah. Thanks for saying that. I really feel like that because there's this weird blessing we got with COVID and just where I was in my cycle of music. And I got 2019 to just go out and grab life by the balls and live it to the max. And I had so many insane shows, but then so much fun traveling the world. Usually travel is a bit chaotic and you don't really get to see anything. You're just on to the next 3 hours sleep, hotel, van, bus, press, on to the next. But I got to like play at a festival and actually camp there for the whole weekend and hang out with like just people, and like just be a person. I got to be a person and experience everything, invited in all these little cultures everywhere in the world, and I just captured all of that. I went big wave surfing for the first time. I was like just driving through Europe, like listening to songs and ingesting music and fulfilling myself, I think, with creative juices, and then going and then COVID was the time where I just knuckled down and refined and grew and kind of restudied my craft a lot to have a better output. And I don't think I could have done that if it was business as usual.
Well, it's amazing how COVID actually meant a lot of people got a lot of work done. And I was expecting musicians to just not do anything. But as it turned out, it was the easiest way to get people to collaborate because everyone was just sitting at home and couldn't go out and do anything. So I'm guessing in your case, it was kind of easy to put the call out and go, hey, can you do some vocals for this? I'm working on something. And was that how it worked for you? Was that easy?
Despite what people may think, we're not the laziest bunch. we're like running a corporation, but then also manic artists. Like it's the worst two combinations of things.
That's all right.
But yeah, prime example. That's how the DMA things happen. They usually never stop, and I usually never stop. So we've never been in this. I don't even know if we'd ever met. I don't think we'd ever met before. Just going, and then suddenly we're like, oh, who's in town? Oh, DMAs, they're sick. You're like, let's get in and see what happens. And just magic. First day, it was great. Another incredible thing for me was the first pretty much year of COVID. I lived with Daniel Johns. He asked me to come up to his place because I didn't have anywhere to live at the time. And it was me and a few other people just kind of made this little art commune, and we're just capturing every moment of the feeling of the world changing so suddenly, and then working out where it was going and how we were going to be.
That explains why last time I saw you, it was 4 years ago at Laneway and in Sydney, and Daniel came out with you, and I was wondering what that connection was. I mean, you're there working with, it would be Newcastle's favourite son, apart from, Maddie and Joey Johns and yourself. But that was an incredible collaboration.
Yeah, I loved that. That was really special. Me and Dan, just how we met, he randomly just walked into a session I was doing with Slumberjack, and he'd, of course, done one song with them, I think, at the time. And he was just like, who's this guy? And then he like got in contact with me. He was like, hey, do you want to come up to my house and make some stuff? And then I was like, okay, cool. We found a little window when we were both free, went up there. And yeah, I remember I was talking about this just today, actually, with someone. The first thing he did, the first vocal he delivered when I got up there, he said to me, he stopped after it and he's like, was that a bit weird? And I was like, no, that was perfect. And it was a very eclectic melody. It was like very peculiar and interesting. And I was so about it. And immediately we just clicked from that very moment, the first recording. And we've just been such great friends since, and done a lot of really awesome work together. And of course, that show you were talking about, I think, was one of the first times he'd performed in many, many, many years. As a lot of people know, he's a bit of a recluse and doesn't like stage so much. And he came out and did that very special show when I was closing the stage at Laneway.
And it was actually the small stage too, which might have meant he was probably a little bit more comfortable rather than being there sort of on the main stage. It felt a bit more intimate, and I'm guessing that would have helped him as well. But that was the thing. There was just this big rumor at the time. They were like, oh, I think Daniel's going to come out for What's So Not. And we were like, surely not. And I was there actually as a photographer. And I'm waiting patiently in the pit. And then they cleared the pit out. They said, sorry, we're going to clear the pit. And I'm like, oh, no way. But it was such a big deal that after all that time, Daniel was doing something. And of course, from that moment onwards, Daniel's been doing quite a lot. So maybe you reignited that for him. Who knows?
I think like for Dan, he's still so hungry to innovate and create things that have never been done before. And I know we've worked on a lot of things that have got him very excited. I know the Slumberjack Boys have, his Boom Tish band. Like, I think there's just a lot of good people around Dan that are like, everyone's just throwing in their best ideas and their best work and lifting each other up to heights that are really exciting.
So one of the big highlights on the album, the single Mr. Regular with Killer Mike, was it done in person or was it literally putting the feeler out saying, hey, can you?
I went and hung out with him in Atlanta, and we went and recorded that in the Stankonia studios, the Outcast studios over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, no, it was great. I did this version of their song Just, their Run the Jewels song, and then they loved it and wanted to put it out. I did this like really cool 3D animated visual for it. And then Mike was wanting to do a verse, and then I was there in Atlanta doing a show with RL Grime, me and RL Grime over there, and then we hit them up and we're like, hey, do you want to do this? Like, we're here, and they're like, yep, we got Stankonia Studios, come up. Went in, hung out with Mike. He's so awesome, so clever, and like got in the booth and I showed him a bunch of songs, and he picked that one, Mr. Regular, and like just nailed it. Like got on a few different brainwaves with it, and then he did this one delivery, which is the first part you hear, the sort of the slow, swaggery sort of delivery. And I was like, oh man, that's it. That's the pocket. And then he goes the double time. And yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, sometimes some of those great moments, you don't need a second take. You know,
Yeah.
you just go, you know what, that's perfect. You hear about demos that've been done the same thing as well. They've actually just used the demo audio and gone, you know what, that's better.
Yeah, it's always a battle as the producer of like, do I make this more refined and more powerful, or am I going to lose what makes it special? And particularly in dance music, it's so challenging because if you don't make it hit hard a certain way, particularly with the drums and the low end, people won't play it because dance music is all about causing that frantic, spontaneous and involuntary dancing. And that actually tends to happen from the mix of a record. So if you don't get it right, you either like people don't dance or it's not a vibe.
Do you reckon rave culture is actually ever going to come back to quite the 2019 levels? You know, like, do you think it's going to recover eventually? Because I think everyone's really excited to be around other people and we're naturally social beings, but we're still at the point where we're a little bit nervous, you know, and I'm hoping that nervousness goes.
I think it's simply that there's a sort of quarter generation now that haven't experienced clubbing. They haven't been ushered into it, and they don't know what it's about. They don't know the culture. There's not like the figures in your local community that sort of, usher you in and guide you through like, oh, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. This guy's cool. This band is great. You might not have heard of these guys, but you have to come and check it out. So that just has to regrow a bit. And I'm definitely like traveling around the world this summer over here in Europe and America. I'm seeing it thriving in certain spaces, and it's so beautiful to see that. Like there is pockets that are kicking off so hard right now. And I think, Australia is probably going to have a pretty exciting window as we come back into summer and things sort of really normalize and grow into the new.
What did you learn in the last couple of years? I mean, did you grow as a person because you knuckled down?
I think I'd done a lot of the growing before I got there, which was also great because it had me focus on other things. Like I'd already been focusing on myself so much that I was, when COVID happened, I was like, I'm going to focus on my craft. I'm going to restudy. And I was very lucky in 2021. I moved over to WA. I did what was called like the first festival back in the world in late 2020. It was Castaway Festival, and I played on a stage 6 stories high, 120 meters outside the festival, and it was a way of getting around the regulations in order to do the festival at that time.
So good.
They had no COVID in Perth, but there were still like these rules that they worked out how to step around. So did that, and then Carl Shock One, who's this amazing drum and bass producer over there and has this amazing, huge studio that's like 2 stories high, perfectly built. I got to use that after he went home to his family every day for about 7 months straight. And for me, that just excelled my abilities in a way that would have been near impossible had my life continued in the frantic touring style, just, mainly working out of headphones and getting into a studio here and there.
Some of those early festivals were so weird. I mean, I went to one that was on a circular, like carousel stage.
Yeah, I think I played that one.
And that was Yours and Ours Festival.
Yeah, I played Yours and Ours.
Yeah, and the police would come out and go, hey, don't get too excited. That section over there, could you sit down? And it was just like, you can't tell people who have like an incredible EDM artist to sit the hell down and not get into it, not dance. And it must have been just as hard for you being an artist as well, because you feed off that naturally.
Yeah, it was tricky. We had to stop every 7 minutes, I think, which is a song and a half.
It was bizarre. It was so good to be back seeing artists and music and supporting festivals who were coming back early. But geez, it was a tough one. So hopefully we never see that again.
Yeah.
Who do you want to work with next? Who are you thinking about now? Because you got a pretty good sort of resume when you look at this particular album, but you must have a bit of a wish list.
I don't know. I like just work with my friends, and just like people I sort of cross paths with, because you never know what a name is. Like it could just be all like wow and no follow through and marketing or whatever. Like you don't really know until you meet people. When you meet people, when you understand people, that's when you get the best work.
Going back to Daniel, because living with him must have been incredibly interesting. Because I truly believe he is I mean, okay, people say genius, and I actually agree with them. He really is.
He's dead set,
and
dead set a genius. Like without a doubt, like philosophically, musically, like whatever you want to think, he is just kind of beyond. And I think that's why sometimes he finds it hard to like operate in our reality and the confines of it. He's just like a giant thinker, like an Einstein, or just in a creative field instead of in science.
And he's got a natural aura about him as well. And, but I just would have loved to sat down and just watch him just start to come up with the song and see how it's like watching the Beatles in a documentary, just seeing how the different stages of a song and how he goes there and what gets left on the cutting room floor as well. That's the other question.
Yeah. I mean, we did record a lot of what we were doing. Like it was quite an exciting process. Yeah. Maybe you get to see it at some point.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope so. What did you think about his project which just came out? Have you listened to the whole thing a few times?
The album?
Yeah, the album.
Yeah, I have. It's amazing. Dan played it for me because I went up there when we were doing the final mix for Stand 'Em Up, and he played me the whole thing front to back. It was incredible, isn't it? I like particularly the opening track just levels you.
Yeah, it does. It does. And there's some of those songs where you just have to sit back and close your eyes. It's like that. The opening, moments of your album as well. It wasn't like that. You had to just crank the hell up. It was just had to be played loud. Your particular, the opening for your album. So I just can't wait to see the reactions as people start to hear it.
Hell yeah.
So you're in LA at the moment.
Yeah.
What does that help you out with exposing yourself to a whole bunch of other artists now as well? Or are you just doing it for the lifestyle?
Honestly, I'm kind of here to be on the time zone, to be more practical with coordinating things. Because, you have a team of agents, label personnel, managers, and we're at the point of like, the album's coming out. Let's go and do exciting stuff about it, and planning that and what it is. And, right now we're talking about the album launch party and how we're going to do this really fun sort of underground thing here in LA. And then I've got the big show at Elsewhere over in New York the day after the release. And there's lots of exciting things coming up. Going to Asia for the first time since COVID in a couple of weeks, and then a month in Europe doing a summer festival run for the album. Because
when you're in LA, it's a little bit easier to deal with Australia too, because it kind of just works for all the time zones. Whereas when you're in Australia, if you're not getting up at, I guess, 4:00 in the morning, it's really, it's pretty tough. You do get exposed to a lot of people naturally. Like you just go out and you just bump into people, get introduced. And that's why I always kind of like going over there too, because you just naturally, it's not even networking, but you end up doing all this networking. Yeah,
I have this problem where I don't go out here. I do what I do in Australia. I sit in my room and make noises, I just try and find the best places where I can sit quietly and make noises to myself and then be happy. Like that's so like I actually almost bought my first house in Nicaragua because I was like, oh yeah, they got a jungle. It's really cool and chill. And then the surf's really good. And I'll just sit here and do my own thing. They got fiber optics, internet. It's better than Australia over here in this third world country. So yeah, this makes the most sense for me.
Is that why you got a great studio tan?
I guess so, but like I actually really hurt my spine recently surfing, so I haven't even been in the ocean. We've got a heat wave over here in LA right now, so I've gone outside for like 10 minutes a day and probably got a tan.
The annoying thing about LA is the Aussies all stick together. They got this little Aussie mafia over there, particularly Aussie musicians as well. And a friend of mine works for Vicious Vinyl, who you probably met, but they do have this little Aussie enclave over there, very tight little group.
Yeah, I mean, I hang out with like a lot of my closest friends here are actually born and raised LA people, who I sort of stumbled across, and I was like, oh, you guys are the real ones here. I'm hanging out with you guys because I mean, if you go in another country, you should get to know the locals. I think that's like pretty essential. That's how you like learn about the cultures here and how you assimilate and how you do your craft better, I would say, and be a bit more worldly with it.
So you come back for summer? Is that the plan for you, or are you going to stick around over there once the album's sort of released and then touring begins again?
I did a lot of Australia in the early part of this year, and I did Australia a lot last year. So I'm not actually heading to Australia for the most part. I've got a couple of shows. I've got Ice Cream Factory in Perth just before Christmas, and I've got one other show I don't think we've announced yet around New Year's. but I will definitely be spending some time in Australia. So I'll probably be writing there more so than performing and saving that. I've been working on this 3D animated film for 3 years or so now. And this album is actually the score of that film. And I've been working out a way to deliver the film as a show and a concert. So I'm just, for the most part, my frustrations is I'm waiting for the infrastructure to catch up with the tech. And it's a complicated thing to tour. And I'm trying to get my head around how we do that and find the right people to get involved to make it happen.
It's funny enough, I was actually going to ask you whether that was the next step, because a lot of EDM artists, they do move on to doing movie soundtracks and scores. And so you beat me to it. But it's a natural progression, really, with that sort of stuff.
I think so, because when you do dance music, you have to write everything. You write every part and you create the tonality of every sound. So you start to understand orchestration and composition pretty well. And I think it leans very well into what the movies are looking for now. With they need that wow factor, and often that is with quite intriguing sound design. I mean, you look at like June that just came out, I think early this year or late last year. Late last year. It's so alien, and you get that by doing very peculiar things with the production. And I think films are at the moment really rallying to get people into the theater. That was one of the first films I saw in theaters in a long time where I was like, I get why you got to come and see this, because you feel it. It's loud. The production is insane and so thrilling. So yeah.
Well, I just realized I haven't asked you what your writer is, because that's the whole premise of the podcast.
Really?
So when you are
I didn't know
touring,
that.
yeah, like I've got to ask everyone, what is in a writer? So what do you ask for? Is it extravagant or is it kind of subtle?
I'm a minimalist, so and I'm trying to not do pollution. So I have no plastic as a rule on my writer. I pretty much only ask for what I need. I even just talk to them about downgrading my writer. So I currently have a bottle of tequila and then soda water and some limes, and then 2 cans of it's like this Minor Figures oat latte in a can. So, and that says this is the big one. I kind of get my rider for the next morning, because I go to the show and I play and then I leave, right? So the rider is, the tequila is if I have friends come, but I just talked about taking that off, because I was like, I'll tell them if I've got friends coming and then we add the tequila on, but I don't need a whole bottle there that doesn't get drunk. I'll just drink a cup of water or something. And then I just get the coffee so that I save myself 40 minutes the next day. I don't have to go looking for a coffee store. I just open this can up that's in the fridge in my hotel, and then I go down to the airport, and then I'm set for the day.
That is the most efficient rider I think I've heard the entire time. But good for you, because generally what people don't know is the artist always pays for the rider anyway.
Exactly.
So what's the point?
And the more you crank your costs up, the more work you have to do to get the same money. So you can do less, be happier, and just cut it back a bit, trim the fat,
And kids, that's why being a DJ is great, because it's just you and your gear, and
just me and my backpack,
100% of the money,
throwing in a USB.
It spun me out when it started to be that technology of just turning up with a USB and your headphones, and I was just like, this is incredible.
I mean, I did the 12-man team for the live show I was doing. That show you would have seen at Laneway with Daniel.
That's right.
I looked at my books at the start of COVID, and that year alone, we spent $300,000 US just on flights to get everybody to the shows. Yeah, wow. It's let's try and not do that.
Yeah, we'll see.
You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. You got to be smart. You got to be efficient, especially now we come out of COVID. And I think the more people on your team, the more risk of actually COVID going through the team. So being on your own is actually probably a pretty good reason.
Yeah, I think as well, everyone's looking at life differently now, and I'm looking at it like this. I want to have fun while I do this. I want to enjoy the local communities I go into, and that might mean taking an extra day. And if you don't have 10 people on with you, you can actually afford to do that, because when you have 10 people on with you, you take a day off. It can cost you $50,000 just straight up, the bus, the trailer, all the crew's wages, per diems, everything. So that was the system wasn't built for us to really enjoy the time, and I'm trying to do that now.
Well, look, congratulations again. Enjoy the run of parties and launch parties and schmoozing you're going to have to do. And we'll see you back in Oz back end of the year. Can't wait.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, mate.
There he is, Chris. What's so not on the rider? What a guy. And the new album is at Anomaly. Go and check it out now. Of course, follow on all the socials. Becko Insta is where you can follow and find out what's coming up on the rider. And also make sure you go back and check out the chats with Andrew Farris, Bush, and even Orianthi, which happened just a couple of weeks ago as well. Next week on the rider, one of the biggest bands in the world in the early 80s. Certainly one of the biggest bands to come out of Scotland. Next week on the rider, this band will premiere their brand new album. We'll catch you next week. This is the rider with Becko.